How are American companies coping with Donald Trump's tariffs? This has been a recurring question since the US president famously launched his trade war on April 2nd last year. Viewed from a macroeconomic lens, it's been hard to arrive at a definitive answer. That's partly because international trade in goods, while important, is only a part of the world's largest economy. Imports are historically equivalent to about 14% of US GDP. The other reason is that companies did their best to work around the tariffs. Some stockpiled goods before Trump's announcement. Others have switched suppliers. Others temporarily absorbed the hit from tariffs rather than immediately passing on the prices to their customers. Some companies also decided to sue the US government, arguing that Trump had abused his emergency powers when imposing the tariffs. Those cases are now in front of the US Supreme Court, and a ruling could come any day. So this week, more than 9 months after Trump's tariff onslaught began, we're going to get a first-hand account of how American companies have weathered the storm. It's what we do at Reuters Breaking Views. We tap our best sources around the world for fresh insights into the biggest questions in business, finance, and economics. I'm your host, Peter Thal Larsen. My guest today runs one of those companies. His name is Mike Musheinesh, and he's the CEO of Detroit Axle, a family-owned manufacturer and distributor of auto parts based in, as the name suggests, the Motor City. Mike and his father have grown the company to just under $500 million in annual sales and about 1,000 employees. As an importer of goods from China, the company was affected by the tariffs imposed by Trump's first administration, which Joe Biden kept in place. After the extra tariffs were introduced last year, Detroit Axle decided to sue the Trump administration. Mike Musheinesh, welcome to The Big View.
Thanks for having me.
So, there's a lot to talk about here, but maybe just for some of our listeners who may not be that familiar with your company, just tell us briefly a little bit about the background of the company and kind of what you do and how you got into this position.
Well, Detroit Axle, we're an auto parts company by the name. Mm-hmm. We're predominantly retailing, e-commerce, brick and mortar stores for do-it-yourselfers, mechanic shops, dealerships throughout the country. Company was started by my father in the late 80s under the name Dearborn Axle. But as we grew, we acquired the name Detroit Axle, not to confuse us with some big players in the industry that targets the OEMs such as Detroit Diesel Axle and American Axle, or a multinational corporation. It's just my father and I. We built this company to over 1,000 employees, a little over $450 million in sales last year. So right. We're living the American dream here.
Exactly. And so, so tell me, just thinking back to that day on April the 2nd, the famous Liberation Day, like what did that announcement do to your business? How did that affect you?
Okay, Liberation Day in April. I was ready for it because right after the inauguration of the president, that same day he ran to the White House, signed an executive order and increased tariffs by 10%. Mm-hmm. So I knew we're in a world of hurt with this administration. And so there comes Liberation Day, right? And how do you liberate a nation by imposing severe taxes on its populace is beyond me.
Mm-hmm. But because you had already had some, effects on your business from the tariffs, the China tariffs that came in during the first Trump administration, isn't that right?
Right. The first Trump administration put a 25% tariffs, and he came and continued his policies, and now went up to 72.5% before it dropped by 10% to 62.5%. I mean, to put it in context for your viewers, I mean, $1
Mm.
million worth of products I imported. Once upon a time, we paid the government $25,000 in tariffs, taxes. And now for the same $1 million in product, we paid the government $725,000 in tariffs or taxes, whatever you want to call it. And now it dropped to $625,000.
Yeah.
So it's earth shattering.
And this is specifically on imports coming from China. But that was, I mean, how important was that to your business?
It's a game changer. I mean, we run on small margins. Everyone runs on small margin. You know, what is it? 5, 6, 7%, depending on which product line we're selling. But to be levied these kind of huge tariffs had to change the whole way we operated. And I'm sure for everyone else in the industry and in the country.
Yeah, so tell me a bit about how because you'd already, as I understand it, you'd already made some changes in terms of the way you ran the business, right? In terms of
Yes.
shifting some of the after the first China tariff. So how did that work?
So after the first round of tariffs back in 2018, we stumbled upon a section of the law called the de minimis exemption. It's been on the books since the 30s, and it states that any merchandise can enter the country that's valued under $800 to enter with no tariffs, no duties. So we said, okay, fabulous. We open up operations right across the border in Mexico, right across from Texas and El Paso. And we leveraged the de minimis exemptions, which actually has been a godsend to lower and middle class Americans. And now it's completely wiped out as of May 2nd of 2025. I mean, this exemptions used to enter nearly 1.5 billion packages annually, and all gone. So there's a lot of restriction in supply, a lot less variety, a lot less choices, meaning that besides the tariffs, the scarcity of products equates to even higher prices.
I mean, just to sort of follow on that a bit on the de minimis exemption, because obviously I think nobody really knew about this before. People weren't really aware of this before it went away, and but I think a lot of the public debate about this has been, oh, this is clothing manufacturers in China selling cheap T-shirts and sneakers and whatever using this exemption. But actually, what you're saying is that it has had a much broader impact in terms of the many more people were taking advantage of this exemption to distribute their products in the US.
Absolutely. Many companies in Europe are using this de minimis to be able to. It was meant for efficiency and expediency for the custom processes, right? That's what it was originally intended for. And then later on, it was the threshold went up to $800 from, I think it was $200, and that was to encourage e-commerce. Again, this was an act of Congress, and it can only be eliminated by Congress. There was some bad actors that should have been dealt with surgically, but here you bring a blowtorch to the whole statute. Companies such as Temu and Shein, and yeah, they abused it, and they should have been stopped, but they punished. Just one thing, that the de minimis was eliminated by Congress in the big beautiful bill, and they put a date of July of 2027 for it to be repealed. As as it goes, that Congress enacted it, Congress removes it. But for the executive to come in and just within a week grab a pencil and just erase some statute, a law that he doesn't like, it's not the way the system works, right? And it's already been eliminated by Congress. And you see, Congress gives us a runway for us to be able to pivot, right, to change our procedures and whatnot. I mean, we've put millions of investments right on the border.
Hmm.
That with a stroke of a pen, he makes it, somewhat irrelevant. Right.
Mm.
And that's what we've been facing throughout this past year with this administration. From one hurdle to another. We can go into
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. No, it definitely sounds like you're sort of playing. It's well, you're not.
Whack-a-mole.
It's
Yeah.
you're not playing whack a mole. You are the mole, I guess. That's been whacked. But
Yeah, right. Yeah. I got the
um,
scars to prove it.
so what? So when this happens, I mean, obviously you're running a business. You have to sort of respond to it. The tariffs from China, the ending of the de minimis exemption. What was your? How did you respond in terms of just running your business? What did you do?
Well, listen, we need to provide a value to the consumer. That's our job. That what keeps us viable. So we said, all right, China is geopolitical issues. Let's visit India. Let's procure from there. Let's let's see what they got. Let's take their products. Let's test them. Let's make the deal. Pay the deposit. We walk away, and they get hit with a 50% tariff,
Mm.
just out the blue. So
Mm.
I mean, God, we even thought about finding maybe some manufacturers in Brazil. Well, then, as we were thinking that, they get hit with a 50% tariff because I guess he didn't like the way they were treating his homie or something. I don't know. I mean, that's not a way to run a business, let alone a country.
Yeah.
So we're in some troubles here.
So you're trying to find these alternatives, but at a certain point, presumably, you have no choice but to raise prices for your consumers, right? I mean, is that what you did, or how did you how
I
did you
mean, it's
deal with that?
unfortunate. Yes. First, you try to trim the fat from your
Hmm.
organization. Try to renegotiate with suppliers and vendors. Try to become more efficient in your operation, but that can only do so much, right?
Hmm.
Then at the end, the consumer is going to have to pay the difference. I mean, again, our margins are whether 5 to 7%. We run on low margins. So the consumer ends up footing the bill. I mean, for example, when you buy something online and you get that free shipping, right? Nothing's free. I mean, it's baked into the cost of the products or merchandise you're purchasing. And I keep hearing this thing that someone else is paying the tariffs. You know, it's really frustrating to think that people actually believe that. And I say to myself, okay, let's say they were paying the tariffs, right?
Hmm.
And don't you think that they will just bake it into the price like the free shipping and raise up the price on us so you end up paying more at the end?
Mm.
So it's
Yeah. Well,
kind of frustrating.
this is one of the things that sort of I think people have been trying to figure out is how this is working. But when you raise the prices, how did your customers respond? Were you able to sort of explain it to them? Did they understand what was happening? How did that play out?
So we prepared ourselves for a 40% plus decrease in sales, actually. So we're ready to whip out the pink slips, right? Because we thought that the consumers are not going to accept it.
Mm.
But again, hindsight is more accurate than foresight, but a lot less valuable. We we noticed that other competitors started to fold. People that were over leveraged with debt or stagnant growth, right? Could not handle the storm, and it just knocked them on their behinds. So we seen less competitors on the market. We've seen less selection on the market. We've seen prices on the market go up. So, in other words, in 2025, our revenue went up by 35%. But
Hmm.
I'd say also profit went down by 80%. So
Wow.
the consumer can't foot the bill all the way. I mean, we're in this together. So we paid a cost and slashed all our profits just to be able to get them a price that they can afford. I mean, I'm seeing it on the road. People are foregoing critical repair, right? And they're foregoing, they're letting the brake noises get louder and louder before they change their brakes. In some cases, this is leading to critical failure that's not
Mm,
even being calculated in all of this. So the consumer is hurt. The consumers
hmm
hurt where everything across the board went up, from hardware to underwear
Yeah.
and everything in between.
Did you and you said you were sort of getting the pink slips ready? Did you have to shrink your workforce?
No, I actually increased my workforce. Again,
Okay.
it- to say we're living off the woes of others is not far from the truth. There's been many people that could not hang on. I mean, again, this is a market right now of who can survive. It's not a
Right.
market of who can thrive. I mean, they came and they took $250 billion out of the economy from tariffs. This $250 billion should have been multiplied fivefold in economic activity, creating more taxable revenue. But on the other hand, none of that happened. All you've seen is more and more layoffs and less
Mm.
taxable revenue. So I'm not an economist. I don't know any better. They're the smart ones.
Well, but this is the interest. In some ways, this is the slightly the conundrum, right? Is the economist when this happened, a lot of the economists said, well, we're going to see kind of some of the things you're describing. We're going to see prices going up. We're going to have more inflation. We're going to see companies laying people off because they have to reduce their costs. And obviously that has happened, and it's happened in some industries, but it hasn't happened at the sort of macroeconomic level. It hasn't happened as much as people expected. So that's, there were people in April last year who were predicting a recession in the US. And actually, growth is still pretty robust. So I think that's one of the things that people are sort of trying to understand is how do these different effects feed through into the economy?
Right. So I would tell you that prior to the tariffs, everybody was hoarding products.
Right. Right.
Warehouses were overfilled with merchandise like they've never seen before. They knew what was coming around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you turn your inventory twice a year or three times a year. But people were packed. I mean, nearly a year supply. And guess what? Around October and November, they started to run out. And when you have to reorder, that's when you reorder with the new tariff rate. And that's why you've seen prices increase slightly, but consistently upwards. Not a one big shock after he imposed the tariffs, but a gradual increase. And the increase hasn't concluded yet. So there should be more on the way.
Right. So it's still working its way through the
It's
system.
still wait. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. We're a big
Yeah.
ship. It doesn't turn on a dime here. The
So
repercussions are still ongoing.
so tell me a bit about sort of the decision to make it to file a lawsuit. To take the U.S. government to court. I mean, presumably that's not something that you do lightly. What was the sort of thinking behind that?
Well, the thinking is that we have an obligation to our employees and to our customers. And when the executive, I mean, see what a wonderful country it is. I mean, I'm an immigrant, right? And with this country affords me the right to challenge the greatest power on earth, right? Isn't that remarkable? So it was afforded to me to sue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we've done. Of course, a lot of friends and family told me that I was a whack job for doing that. You don't do that. There would be repercussions and whatnot. And I took it as a business decision. This is not personal. It's just strictly business. The president was suing everybody under the sun when he was in business. So we're just following his lead.
And there's obviously been other companies that have done the same thing. I mean, just out of curiosity,
Mhm.
have there been any repercussions? Did you have you?
Well, not
Has there
yet.
been?
Maybe after he hears on your show, that's when they'll come after me. So, honey, Hopefully not. So again,
Okay,
listen, this is all in the framework of what's afforded to us, right? We took
right.
it to the Court of International Trade. There was a case ahead of us that's now in the Supreme Court called the VOS selection.
Hmm.
They have filed maybe about a week before us. So after they won and we won, that's when everybody started suing. So the writing is on the wall. So I don't know which way the Supreme Court would go on, but at the end, this lawsuit is against the IEPA tariffs, the fentanyl tariffs. So if
You,
that, yes,
sorry,
if
just
that
explains.
wins, yes,
Sorry, just to explain to people what the IEPA tariff, what that stands for. It's basically the use of using emergency powers, right?
emergency
To
power is
impose.
given to that power was given to the executive back in the 70s to regulate trade and impose tariffs during a national emergency, right?
Yeah.
That's why he used everything as a national emergency. Um, with that IEPA law, he also eliminated the de minimis, and so that's where our challenge was.
Right.
But
Right.
if this wins in the Supreme Court, in the grand scheme of things, we might get the de minimis back, fine, but the tariff rate will only drop 10% on the other goods and our goods also, because he's issued a tariff of 25% on steel and aluminum. He's issued something, a worldwide tariff on auto parts at 25%, and some other tariff. So you would still be somewhere in the 50% tile in tariffs, even with this case being won.
Even if that went back. Right. Right. So what? So then, I mean, how do you sort of think about your business then going forward? I mean, you said you're in the everybody's in survival mode, right? And trying to sort of hang on and see how this plays out. But it seems, I mean, from the people I talk to, the history tells us that when tariffs get introduced, they stay in place for a long time because people get used to the revenue, and they, and people who benefit from others having tariffs also want to keep the tariffs in place. So it's generally much slower to remove tariffs than it is to impose them. So it kind of feels like we're going to be with living with these tariffs for a long time. So how do you sort of think about your business then going forward?
People, right now, the government is choosing who the winners and losers are. That should be the market, right? You impose tariffs. Now, what happens? There's a lot of money to be made by avoiding tariffs. As
Mm-hmm.
prohibition in the 30s came around, or the 20s, and no one's allowed to drink booze. So there was, the rise of the mobster. So you don't know what's happening right now in the market, right? In the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? So criminality might be rising up because we see people selling similar products for half the cost, right? We know, that they're probably skidding the tariffs by going through other countries or whatnot. So,
The
anyways,
trend,
there is
yeah.
no more level playing field anymore. Now you're competing with, bad actors. You're competing with people that might have been tariff exempt that are, favorable to the government here. So that's not the way. That's not the best for the consumer. The best thing for the consumer is to get the government out of the way and let us beat the hell out of each other to get the prices down. So the fastest, the cheapest, the best earns your business. I mean, that's the way. That's what made America great. Sorry to use that line, but
Yeah, it's true. Um, but so what do you then think? So when you talk to people in the administration about this, one of the things they say is we need to bring manufacturing back to the US, right? We've hollowed out all the manufacturing. 50 years ago, the parts that you are selling would have all been made down the road, somewhere in Michigan or in other parts of the US. Then it all got moved out of the US, went to Mexico, went to China eventually. And we need to bring this back. So that's one of the justifications for the tariff policies. I just wonder how you think about that. Is is that something? Do you see any sign of that happening? Is there any manufacturing coming back, and how realistic do you think that is?
I find that to be not the case, and the opposite is occurring. Whatever manufacturing is left is being hollowed out by these tariffs, right? Uh, you we back in maybe in the 80s and the 70s were still producing here. I have another facility where we rebuild auto parts. We take used auto parts throughout the country, we tear them apart, cut them, grind them, machine them, reassemble them. And I was hard pressed to find a young man that's able to run a lathe or a mill. I had to find an old timer, but in his 80s, to come train my men how to use a mill. So there's some inherent tribal knowledge that we lost as a country. Maybe we become financialized and service economy. So giving us time to grow, right, and learn how to, produce, learn how to manufacture, learn how to run the people within the manufacturer, and it all takes time to develop, right? I mean, there was once upon a time we were complaining about transfer of technology from here to China. I'd like to say that maybe we should have a transfer of technology from China back to here, industrial technology, production technology. That's all been hollowed out. I as you grow a company, you don't know everything. You learn as you go. So my idea was, okay, sure, the Chinese have, now they've become, a big power, a prudent, capable, within China. So why not leverage that? These Chinese factories are opening up factories in Malaysia and in Indonesia and in Taiwan, so they can ship their products to the US by bypassing the tariffs. So why didn't we make the, conducive environment for them to, hey, come over here and open up your facility, joint partnership with Americans such as myself to produce products here? Why is it that we have to talk such a tough game and shut the door on them and call them names? And that's not the smart way to execute things, right? So no, I don't see manufacturing growing with these tariffs at all. I mean, we need trade.
Yeah. But you're saying you could imagine a world in which over time maybe some manufacturing would come back, but you'd have to have just the tariffs alone is not going to deliver that, basically.
All it's going to do is just going to put more hurdles on us. I mean, we bought machinery to rebuild products. Our next step was to be able to produce the products. But sir, I mean, my father and I take everything we worked for and we put it into the company. We put more than just skin in the game, year after year after year. So here, we're going from 2014 of $13 million in tariff paid to the federal government to over $110 million in tariff paid to the government. So that money was all for merchandise and machinery and engineers and pallet racking and equipment, but that's all gone.
Yep.
And it's given to the federal government. Maybe they paid interest on their debt for it. So I don't know how that helps to generate economic activity, paying interest. But that's where we are today. And that's what's stifling innovation, growth. So I'd like to say my father and I were where we were back a long time ago. I don't think we would have been able to break out, right, and grow the company with all these hurdles in place. Regulation is just, he's putting more regulations on. And all they do is just monopolize all the power to the big corporations. And the medium, small guys are just, they're meant to go under or something. But we won't let that happen.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that. We're out of time, so we have to close there. But Mike, I want to thank you. This has been really, really fascinating. Appreciate you taking the time coming to talk to us about your business. And it'd be great to check in from time to time and see how you're coping.
honored to be on your program. Thank you.
That's our show today. Thanks to Mike for that fascinating conversation, and thanks, as always, to you for tuning in. This episode was produced by Oliver Taslich, with support from Mike Copeland, John Hodge, and Sunita Barthford in the studio in London. You can tune into a new episode of The Big View every Tuesday, and don't forget to check out our sister show, Viewsroom, every Thursday, as well as all the other great podcasts from the Reuters team. And you can read our views every day at breakingviews.com and reuters.com.